How fitting for our times. Okay, it's unethical for journalists to lie, right? That's just a general claim. Okay, then we're given some more information. Some argue that what's this? This is the opinion of other people, right? Like lying is intentional deception and therefore unethical. That therefore is introducing the opinion or the conclusion of the opinion of others, right? The conclusion of the other people. What's probably going to happen now? Lauren, what do you think? They just gave us the opinion of someone else. Not necessarily. It could be a concession, but probably what's going to happen is they're going to reject that opinion. And when we have this word, however, it's like, oh, okay, red flag, probably disagreeing with what was just said. However, this argument fails to recognize the distinction between failing to prevent a false belief and actively encouraging one. I hope we were paying a close enough attention to this argument that we understood the distinction, right? Lying to someone explicitly versus just not telling them something that you know. That's a clear distinction. I do it all the time. I might do it in this class. You know, people lie 7 times a day, so don't think that, you know, if someone says that they lie, it's not that bad. Because you've done it 6 more times that day. Lying is unethical because it actively encourages a false belief. Okay, so active encouragement versus passive, just sitting there, hey, I didn't encourage you to take on this false belief. All right, so then what type of argument or what type of question is this? Reasoning. The argument or the journalist argues by doing what? What is the argument? What is the journalist doing? My prediction was, okay, the journalist made a distinction or clarified the difference between these two kinds of events and then said, hey, thus they're not the same, right? That was my plain English prediction. Is that what we had, roughly? Okay, answer choice A. Pointing out a difference, I use distinction, they say difference. Pointing out a difference between the two cases being compared in order to show that the conclusion based on their similarities, what's their similarities? Intentional deception, right? Should not be drawn. Oh, I'm sorry. A conclusion based on their similarities, yeah. So the conclusion was that they're both unethical, right? And it's based on the similarities, the fact that they are encouraging intentional deception should not be drawn because there's a slight distinction between them. I thought this was pretty good and then started going through the rest. Which ones were we debating?
A and E.
A and E? Okay, E. Clarifying and defending a moral principle. So let's stop there. What's the moral principle? Wait, lying is unethical or...
But the distinction can't be drawn.
Wait, is that a moral principle? The distinction can't be drawn? I'm just curious what the moral principle is.
Lying is unethical.
Lying is unethical?
Because it...
Okay. So is the author clarifying and defending a moral principle? In other words, the principle that it's unethical for journalists to lie by comparing a case in which it applies to one in which it does not apply? I'm having a little trouble matching this language exactly to the passage. Is this happening? That's the same question for reasoning and role. Is this exactly what's happening? Is the author defending a moral principle? Or just saying this thing is not unethical? Notice, let's go back to A. Pointing out a difference between the two cases. Yes, points out a difference between the two cases. Right, between actively lying and just not and withholding information. In order to show that a conclusion based on their similarities, that the second situation is unethical, should not be drawn because there are actually some key differences. Right? I feel like as we go through it part by part, we can match it to something that happened, whereas E, I'm having a little bit of trouble. E, were you tempted by E as well? What do you think about that? You still...
I wrote it down that I said it's not clarifying the moral principle because it's not
saying that this should happen all the time. Like it's not a principle.
What's the principle? The principle.
know.
The principle is that lying is unethical, maybe.
I guess. I feel like, well, now you're making me think that there's not even one existing.
Well, I think there might be a moral principle in here, but it's not what the focus of this argument is, right?
Right.
The argument is really these guys are saying it's unethical, and I don't think it is unethical.
Journalists shouldn't lie is the moral principle.
Yeah, it's unethical for journalists to lie.
It's just different.
Are we clarifying and defending that moral principle? I'm actually taking more issue with the defending part of it.
That's kind of what I put. I mean, like, if we looked at it, yes, A is a stronger answer,
Mm-hmm.
and probably I should have just said it was a stronger answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I wanted E to work because it sounded stronger,
Mm.
and I like psyched myself out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And
So-
he's saying journalists. He's not saying journalists shouldn't lie. Like he could be pro lying, right? On
He says it's unethical for journalists.
Well, this person thinks that it is unethical for journalists to lie, specifically when you're actively deceiving the listener, but the journalist doesn't think that it's unethical when you're just not revealing information, right? So it seems like the point of this passage is to clarify. So I'm okay with the first part of E, and maybe that's why it's tempting. But defending a moral principle, it's actually just clarifying it by comparing a case in which it applies to one in which it does not apply. Okay, maybe you say, hey, the moral principle applies when you're actively lying, but it does not apply when you're withholding information. But again, the point here isn't to defend the moral principle, it's to point out that this situation is not ethical. So it doesn't seem like a good description of what's happening. Yeah, even if we try to give it its best
Actually, I think it
argument. You
kind
think-
of does though, because it says it is unethical for journalists to lie to get a story,
Okay.
and then it says, however, journalists commonly withhold relevant information,
Yep.
and then it says, although some might consider that lying, it's not actually lying. So it's sort of defending that journalists withhold information to get a story.
But I think the moral principle is not that. I think the moral principle is it's unethical to lie
to get a story.
to get a story.
And then it's saying that this instance is not lying.
Yeah. So the point of this is to clarify what the rule is, not necessarily to defend it.
Okay.
Right? This person is just saying, hey, what falls under that rule and what doesn't fall under that rule, not, hey, this rule is good. That's where the defending part of E, I think, seems problematic to me. Okay. Any other questions on this one? Yeah. Oh, what's the main conclusion of this? I would say it's the however sentence.
At the end or in the beginning?
No, at the end.
Wait, why wouldn't it be the last sentence?
Let's see here. This argument fails to recognize the statement failing to. Oh no, that's absolutely right. Lying is unethical because it actively encourages a false belief. No. I think the last sentence is actually supporting the however sentence because it's explaining why the argument fails to recognize that distinction. Why does it fail to recognize that distinction? Because lying is this active encouragement of a false belief.
So the lying sentence is the conclusion.
The very last sentence is evidence for the however sentence that comes second to last.
So it's a premise
The last sentence is a premise
for the conclusion
for,
right before it.
for the conclusion that comes right before it.
Okay.
Cora, are you okay with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I got it right, but then what is our first question?
Start questioning yourself. Yeah. The main conclusion here is that however sentence, which clarifies that the argument is failing to recognize this distinction, which gets back kind of our issue with E, right? Because E was talking about defending, and we're like, no, it's just about the distinction.
Yeah, I think once I come back to it, it's clear.
However is an indicator word when it comes after the opinion of other people. That's probably the main conclusion, but notice I'm saying probably, unlike therefore where it's like, yes, that's a conclusion, I just don't know whether it's main or intermediate.
The softer indicator.
Yeah, it's like probably, now I'm thinking that's gonna be the main conclusion, I just gotta make sure, based on the content. Yeah. All right.